Well, good evening. I believe that I am the last thing standing between you, beverages, and Pitbull, but I think this is an important topic. We're going to talk about implementation planning and client-side responsibilities. So if any of you have been to the sessions, you may have heard Duncan and Darren and Susan and others talk about what are the things that make projects fail or not do well. And the top three that I kept hearing in this order was change management, bad data, and integration. So that fits and ties in really well with the topic that we're going to talk about, and it just proves that it's a topic that's on everybody's mind. So audience question, by show of hands, how many of you have enough staff to effectively support a mission-critical, large supply chain project and do your normal day job at the same time? So what I can see is that, yes, some of you have done large-scale projects. Most of you do them with not enough hands, and it's a process and a progress that you have to staff accordingly. So this steps right into some of the topics that were talked about in other sessions. At the very top, there's program management and project management. Most of the people who are going to be staffing your projects from your staff either are voluntold or volunteered, and what you don't want is the voluntold. So staffing appropriately with project management and program management in order to substantiate the success or the failure of your project. Another key topic is change management. Everything that you're going to be doing impacts the entire company. So starting at the very top with leadership control, that change management has to be focused throughout the process. So the way that we do these things at Alpine is we look at it from the very beginning of the project, starting once the sale is completed. And I'm going to run through each of these individually, but at the bottom of the scale, we like to look at this as a transition from the beginning of the project through the end of the project with its go live. And you can see the color coding going from green and then amber red and then to blue. So the overlap is the different phases within your project. Typically a WMS project implementation starts with a design phase. So we bring to the table leaders in that design industry who have already gathered all the detailed requirements on how the company should operate and how the new software should function. So by the time we get in front of the vendors and we're advocating for the customers, we have a very clear, concise idea on how the processes should work and how the functionality of the WMS should provide value. And we work very closely with the vendors to try to stay as close to what they will call base or vanilla as possible. But we provide that customer input based upon the discrete requirements that we've gathered, and we come to a design that's very successful for both parties. Then it moves into the phase where the vendor providers, Blue Yonder, goes back and they start configuring this. In that time frame, we also introduce other assets from within our organization, Alpine, and the customer, who are going to provide the ongoing support for the implementation, starting typically with how are the things going to be designed and then how are they going to function for the users. Those users are going to be the ones that are adopting and using the systems day in and day out. So we bring to the table experienced, skilled professionals that understand the importance of unit testing, that understand the importance of data management, that understand the importance of work instructions, SOPs, SIT, all the things that have to be collaborated between the customer and the vendor. Most vendors, and I think if I were to poll those out there that are working for Blue Yonder or other software providers, don't have the wherewithal to give the time, energy, and effort to support this side of it. They're there to make sure that the functionality gets screwed in right and it gets turned on and everything gets adopted accordingly. So to ensure success, recapping program management and project management to make sure that there's one integrated plan where all are in alignment for the success. A seamless implementation through consistent communication. You have to communicate the plan, the goal, and the deliverable from the leadership down through the users out on the floor. Then there's a project director role to make sure that there's a quality product on time and on value, all overseeing the different categories of the implementation. Then you have to make sure that the results align with the goals and the best practices for not only your current needs, but your future needs, your 2, 5-year, 10-year roadmaps. Most WMS implementations and projects and software have a lifespan of 10 to 15 years. So you're going in with a partner that you're going to live with over many, many years to make sure that you're successful both today and tomorrow. Lastly, the organizational change management. It's really a business discipline, and it's critical to the success of any transformation. This has been forgotten for many, many projects in years past. What we've come to see and find out is change management is a key part of making a project successful, not only through the on time and on budget, but through the adoption of the users who are going to be using the technology day in and day out. That change management must be internal and external, communicated to all parties and substantiated by all parties from the leadership level all the way down to the users on the floor. So, to break these down into different categories and just to make sure that we're covering off on all the disciplines that have to happen, phase one is facility prep. So when you walk into a distribution center, when you walk into a facility, unless they're currently using technology that supports this, they may or may not be ready for what the things that are coming from the WMS. Facility prep in and of itself is making sure that the labels are racked accordingly. Make sure that you have aisle designation. Make sure that all the things that the WMS function is going to consume is there. The next phase is the design phase. You can call it design, you can call it divine, you can call it configuring the system the way that the customer wants to use it. That moves typically into a phase where the vendor goes back and he writes the code and changes the configuration. The third is data support. We talked about data being one of the constant points of failure. Then phase 4, work instructions and SOPs. You will have tools available provided by the vendor of the software typically that gives you the tools to create the work instructions, the standard operating procedures. Generally, the vendor won't do that for you. They're asking the customer to do that on the client side. That's where Alpine would support. Next would be the acceptance test and acceptance test plan and making sure that the way that was configured is the way that you want it to run. Lastly is the end user training. Are the users prepared and are they ready to make sure that all the applications were coded correctly and the feature function is there? And then last is the go live support, which is something that should be already behind you. You've gone through mock go lives and everything's successful. So a little deeper dive on facility prep, location addressing systems. Make sure that you've got the right labels in the right place. Make sure that you know how they're defined. Do you have RF equipment already procured? What's the lead time on the type of RF equipment that you want to use? Is Wi-Fi there? Do you have enough access points? And lastly, printers. So all these categories under facility prep happen way in advance of the other activities through a successful implementation. Without those, you're scrambling at the end state to make sure that you've got everything that you need. Second is the design and adapt. So we assist with the design workshops. We sit across the table from the vendor and we sit beside the customer who we're advocating for. We assist in the documentation of all those discrete feature functions that are provided within the WMS application. And what we find oftentimes is providers like Blue Yonder have a plethora of feature functionality available within their portfolio within the WMS application. Rarely do the customers flex and use all of the feature functionality that's available. They may be coming in an MVP approach. They may be coming in an approach of let's just get it turned on and screwed in on time, and then we'll look at a phase 2. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't work. So what we look at very closely is let's leverage the feature functionality that will make this a successful project and get the ROI that's expected by the leadership. And then we transition from design to configuration and execution. That's where the folks from Blue Yonder or their systems integrators go out and they change the configuration to meet and exceed the obligation of coming up with a feature functionality. Then we finalize the requirements document and that goes to solution architecture. The second one is one of the key indicators that was mentioned by Duncan and Darren and Susan of a point of failure. Is the data correct? Are your integrations correct? Do you have the right critical dimensions on your items? All those things that can make or break a successful install. So the other part of that is the ERP WMS field mapping. They also talked about a point of failure being the long pole in the tent of integration. There's been a lot of discussions this week around Snowflake, how that's going to make this easier, but in the meantime, there's still going to be API, there's still going to be EDI, there's going to be other applications for the transformation of information from ERP or host back to the WMS. Phase 4 is the work instructions. So now the heavy lifting starts. You've got the code there, you've got the operations there, and frankly, we as a provider of client-side responsibilities to the customer, we're there to teach you how to fish. We're not there to keep you on the pole long term. When we leave, we want to make sure that you're prepared, well prepared, and well invested in making sure that the project is a success as we move out and you move into a day by day. So we create the work instructions, the SOPs, the training guides to make sure that everything is working correctly. Along with that, we do operational risk assessments. Where do we think the single or the multi-points of failures might be? And we document all those things so when we do our departure, we make sure that everybody is on the same page. Next is the acceptance test plan. So we write the test scripts, we develop the test scripts, and they're repeatable. We also do the systems integration testing, which is another key item. Oftentimes, we will come to a customer and they've got parts of integration completed. They don't have the integration totally completed. What an SIT is really supposed to do is really flex the muscle of the integration between the WMS and the host solution from the time the product hits the receiving dock till the time the product gets shipped. There are several transfers of information through this integration layer back and forth to a host for inventory updates, for sales order updates, for receipt updates, for inventory adjustment updates, and others. And without a true SIT, you really don't get the big picture on whether integration is performing the way it should be. Lastly, we validate the SIT and the UAT with the ERP. Phase 6 is the end user training. This is where we really work hard with the people out on the floor who are going to be interacting with either the RF devices, goods to person, whatever it might be. So we prepare the documentation, we create the training plan, and we carefully train each of those users to make sure that they are fully aware and fully understand what their day-to-day jobs and work is supposed to look like. We often use a train-the-trainer approach, so when we have a multi-site rollout, we can make sure that that information and that training goes from person to person. Phase 7 is the go live. This is the fun day. This is where the rubber meets the road. It's game day. We provide on-site support. We communicate with both the technical team and the operational team and make sure that all those lines of communication is open, and for sure celebrate your success at the end of it. So Alpine, we've done this day in and day out for many, many years. Most companies do a big supply chain transformation project once or twice in a career. We do it on a daily basis, so we understand the different pitfalls and the areas of improvement. Thank you very much. One claim from Doug Baker: good supply chains save money, great supply chains make money. He's the chairman of the board at Blue and one of the Blue Yonder customers. So, time for any questions? Yes. The question was, what's the most compelling event on a WMS implementation that I would focus on the most? There's really two, and I think the one would be user adoption, and the second one would be making sure that leadership is on board with the entire process. It's really hard to do a successful project from the bottom up. Most successful projects that we're exposed to are a top-down effect where we get buy-in from leadership. They understand the different processes that are going to have to occur, and they understand that this is a long-term project, but a very long-term goal to make sure that they're getting to the point that they want to get for both now and in the future. Thank you. Any more questions? The question was the most volatile portion of the project. I'd say there's probably several critical control points, but in our experience, it's usually with the timing of the integration. So when you get a statement of work and a project plan, most often you will see this project spans anywhere from 6 months to 12 months. The vendors will tell you that we can do it in any time frame that's available to you. What really happens usually is the customer can't provide the advanced skill sets and the technical skill sets to complete those integrations on an on-time manner. So it delays the project. That's usually where the most volatility comes into play. So we try to coach them ahead of time what technology you're going to use for your integration. Is it a Boomi? Is it a MuleSoft? Is it something that is homegrown? How are you going to communicate from the two systems? And if you don't have enough staff and enough wherewithal to do that, let's start looking now in order to staff that appropriately to make this project on time and on budget. Okay, I don't think we have any more questions. I appreciate it. Again, I'm Greg Utter. I'm with Alpine Supply Chain Solutions. Catch me after this talk and we can discuss anything else that you'd like to. I appreciate it.